Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is Tracy Ann Doss. Today we're going to be talking about the documentary Bad Surgeon, Love Under the Knife. But before we get into it, I want to just say that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please share, like, and subscribe so I can build my community. Okay, we're going to start off by talking about the narrator of the story, Benita. She becomes physically and emotionally connected to Paolo Macchiarini while writing a story about him for NBC. Benita in 2013 is at the height of her career. She is a single mother focused on her career and providing for herself and her daughter. Romance was not on her radar. NBC wanted to do a story about the hot topic regenerative medicine, which she didn't know a lot about, but she's a great researcher, so she got started on this topic. Benita is researching the story, will we ever grow organs, when Paolo Macchiarini's name comes up. Paolo Macchiarini's name emerges as a pioneer of transplanting organs grown in labs. The story of Paolo's surgery and his connection to Karolinska University in Stockholm, Sweden is all over the news. And this piques the curiosity of Benita and her NBC crew. The first gentleman that we're going to talk about is as one of Paolo's patients. His name is Chris, and he, at 30 years old, young father, full of life and energy, finds out that he has cancer of the windpipe. And he's given 6 months to live. This is devastating news for his family and obviously for him, because he wants to be there to watch his daughter grow up, walk her down the aisle, all these things. So the story unfolds when his sister Erica wakes up from a deep sleep with 2 words in mind: stem cells. She decides to get online, do some research along with her husband, and they come across that same name, Paolo Macchiarini. I mean, this man is all over the place. He is the most renowned surgeon in this area. And he has created a plastic windpipe that's bathed in the patient's stem cells. And these stem cells would integrate into the body, and it would build you a new windpipe. The next story is of a much younger client, a beautiful baby girl named Hannah. She is born without a windpipe. She's 2 years old, and parents of this little girl are desperate. So Paolo has no choice but to help this little girl. But can you imagine the pressure is intense? This just little baby girl, and this is a second patient. Now, Benita's documentary that she's working on of Paolo portrays Paolo as an incredible surgeon, a sex symbol, and Paolo checks all the boxes. He's sexy, charismatic, he's a world traveler, innovator, and he speaks 5 languages, and he's Italian. So Benita can't help but be attracted to this man, and the attraction is on both sides. The romantic dinners start, and then the kiss in the elevator changes everything. They decide to keep their love affair under wraps until the story was finished. As a journalist, one needs to appear impartial. Now, back to Chris's story. Chris, after the surgery, as his positive attitude shines through, the infection in the wound immediately began. And Paolo's team were in charge of the patient's aftercare. After returning home to see his daughter and family, he passed within 1 week. And Hannah passed as well Paolo blamed both of these failures on the patient's health, not on his surgery. He blamed their poor health as to why the surgeries didn't work out. And although both families lost their loved ones, they loved Paolo. They thought he was an amazing doctor, and they were happy to be given a chance and to be part of the history of this transplant innovation. They were very proud of that. Bonita's documentary makes a pivot from one of success to one of hope due to the deaths of these patients. In 2013, Paolo proposes to Bonita, but by New Year's, he has to leave. He has a lot of important surgeries to facilitate, and the moment is ruined. Bonita's upset, and that's when he tells her about this secret network of doctors for the elites, the Obamas, the Clintons, the Pope, the Emperor of Japan. These are all his clients, and they're important, and when he needs to go, she just needs to understand he needs to go. A year after the engagement, Bose Lindquist receives a letter of accusation claiming fraud of science and killing his patients. Bose is an investigative reporter, and this email is alarming, and although he looked into Paolo, he only found nothing but wonderful reviews. So this is really startling to him, and this is when his investigation begins. So Paolo feels his former patient's health issues clouded the success of his surgeries. He wanted healthy, young, strong patients, which is kind of interesting considering it is a transplant. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of healthy patients that need a windpipe transplant, but this is what he wanted because he felt like that's why he wasn't successful in these surgeries, and that's why he's losing his patients. They just weren't strong enough. So he begins negotiations with Russia, and the line is drawn in the sand. December of 2012 is the first round of trials. Julia, a car accident victim. She was in an accident that damaged her windpipe. Now, she was by no means on death's door, but this was something that she really wanted fixed. She wanted to be like she was before the accident, so she pleaded with Paolo, and he saw Julia as a perfect candidate. She was healthy, she was a former dancer, and she was young, and so he decided to choose her for this operation. Now, after the surgery, Julia did a press conference, and she appeared to be recovering quite well. This was filmed for another documentary. Now, Bose Lindquist's crew reaches out to interview the mother of Julia and to invite them to the premiere of the documentary that they had just finished. And they're informed by the mother that Julia is no longer with us. She's passed, and she suffered greatly. This was not a success story in the least bit. Julia was coughing up pieces of her own flesh. The success of Julia's surgery is a huge lie, and it's also a hidden lie. Nobody's talking about it, and this is really disturbing to these journalists, and they wanted to get to the bottom of this. The second part of the documentary focuses on Bonita and Paolo's love affair. After A Leap of Faith is aired, Bonita and Paolo can now announce their engagement and tell everybody about their relationship. And Paolo shares his celebrity stories with Bonita's family, and he wins them over. Now, Paolo tells Bonita He's the one who's going to be planning the wedding. He wants this big, gorgeous, elaborate wedding in Italy. And he is going to go to the Vatican and ask the Pope to marry them. He claims to be a personal friend, and he claims to be a personal friend and the personal doctor of the Pope. So by 2013, as they're planning the wedding, 3 of his patients have died. And Miriam from Iceland, Christopher from Chicago, and Yasum from Turkey. Matthias is a surgeon on Paolo's team, and he discusses Yasum's story. She was a healthy young woman who was bothered by annoying issues that she was having. So her story and her problems are nowhere near life-threatening. I mean, this is not a candidate for a windpipe transplant. But she was definitely healthy, and Paolo wanted healthy people to operate on. So he talked her into being part of his study, and the surgeons on his team were left to care for the patients after the operations were finished. And they witnessed the horrors and the suffering that these patients experienced. Paolo was off on to the next thing. He was either visiting Bonita, or he was traveling and having these elaborate dinners, or he was doing speeches about his amazing surgeries that he's been successful with, and they're left to care for these poor patients. At a minimum was returned to the hospital with unimaginable pain, and he died. Yasum was in intensive care for 4.5 years. She had to have her airway cleared every 4 hours, which is incredibly painful. Matthias's eyes are opened. He discovers Paolo never did animal testing, not at all. And he was testing on his patients. Callie, another one of the surgeons on Paolo's team, confronts Paolo and is told by Paolo, it's none of your business. The exposure begins. The whistleblowers and journalists get footage from one of the documentaries about Julia's journey. Footage of the faulty tracheas is found. Paolo knew the surgery for Julia was doomed, and he went ahead and did it anyway. This is criminal, and he took an oath to do no harm to his patients, and he knew this product would fail. And Julia woke up and she couldn't breathe. It was so thin it folded over immediately. She could feel it. The problems arise between Bonita and Paolo when some of the stories that he's told her are just not jiving, and she's starting to get really uncomfortable because she's planning to move to Barcelona with her daughter and quit her job of 17 years. One of her co-workers tells her the Pope is not going to be in Italy the day of your wedding, so how could he be the one who's marrying you? And then Chris's sister, Erica, says, I called that castle that we're all supposed to be staying at, and they don't know anything about a wedding, so I'm concerned. The whistleblowers bring their concerns also to the hospitals. They're also concerned about Paolo's lies. The hospital supports Paolo. They have overwhelming proof that he's committed research fraud, and they bring this information to the hospital, to the heads of the hospital, and they tell him the windpipes are collapsing and rotting in the patients. I mean, these are the men that are in the operating room with Paolo. They know what's going on. And these stem cells were not living on the plastic tubes. The findings were leaked to the New York Times, and the headline says, leading surgeon is accused of misconduct in experimental transplant operations, and this is devastating to Paolo. I mean, this is ruining his career and his reputation, and he is just devastated. Benita learns about all of this, and she becomes his advocate. She does what she does best, and she starts putting out fires, and she is 100% behind him when these stories in the New York Times come out. But she is starting to get really worried. She's starting to wonder who this man is, and she wants to know what he's hiding in Barcelona, because every time they plan to go there, he has some kind of excuse and reason why they can't go. So she puts together a little trip with her girlfriends, and off they go to Barcelona, and off they go to the house that she's supposed to be living in after the wedding. And she sends her girlfriends ahead, trying to compose herself. She has a really strong intuition that this man is telling her lies and that he's hiding something from her. And sure enough, her two girlfriends go to the door, and down comes Paolo, and he's not even supposed to be there. He had told Benita that he was in Russia. And behind Paolo is a woman and two little girls, and one of the little girls is saying daddy, and this is all she needs to hear. It's like she already knew, but this was confirmation that her fears are true and that this man has been lying to her. And so she takes off and back to New York, and she gets rid of all the things that he's given to her, the art, the jewelry, except for the engagement ring that she was told is worth $100,000. Now, this man is a world-renowned surgeon with the most elitist of elite clientele, and $100,000 is nothing to a man like this. So she didn't anticipate the news that she heard next, that the ring was really only worth $1,000. And this really lit a fire underneath her. She was so pissed, and she decided that at this moment that she would have revenge on this man that's tried to ruin her life. So what does she do? She goes to Vanity Fair, and she writes a scathing article, and she lets everybody know who the real Paolo is. And because Vanity Fair is such a huge magazine, it reaches far and wide, and it reaches to the woman with the daughter in Barcelona. And the next part of the documentary, we're going to introduce Anna to everybody, this beautiful Italian woman whose story is just so heartbreaking. How she met Paolo was she was in a car accident with her son, and her son had to be incubated. And during that process, his windpipe was damaged. So she was approached by Paolo, and he was going to help her with her son's situation. And immediately after he operated, there was problems. And not only was her son put into a coma, artery had been hit, and he had bled out and died. And he had to tell Anna this, and she didn't blame Paolo for this. She blamed the hospital for whatever reason. And Anna decided to inquire and make official complaint against the hospital, but not against Paolo, against the hospital. But when they looked into it, they told her, her lawyer told her, you need to let Paolo know that he is also under investigation for this. And this is when Paolo began his affair with Anna. He wined her and he dined her and wanted to keep the relationship under wraps until the investigation was over, but he wanted to keep her close to him because he wanted to know what was going on, and he wanted her on his side. And for 2 years, they kept their relationship under wraps. But the minute the investigation was over, Paolo and Anna moved in together. They had a child, and she was devastated when she found out that this man that she was living with and had a child with was actually having an affair this whole time with Benita. So the next really important part of the documentary is when the whistleblowers and journalists get a hold of the email that Julia sent to the documentary makers. The email that told them of all the horrors that she was going through, and they didn't enclose this. They didn't announce this or enclose this. They just hid it. And this was really shocking to everybody because this is definitely medical misconduct, and this just lit a fire under all of these whistleblowers. They just wanted to get this information out there and to have Paolo be held responsible for the things that he was doing. He couldn't keep doing these operations and using these patients as guinea pigs. The whistleblowers bring their concerns to the hospital, and the hospital supports Paolo. This is their golden child. And even though there's overwhelming proof of research fraud, and the windpipes were collapsing and rotting, the hospital didn't care. They wanted to support their moneymaker, and they were going to build a whole wing for him to do his operations at. But these stem cells were not living on the plastic tubes. They were finding tons of problems, and eventually the hospital had to back away from Paolo. They had to save themselves because there was just so much overwhelming problems with the operations and the surgeries, and they could no longer hide it. He's finally charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault. In the 3rd count, he is convicted of causing great bodily harm and leaves Sweden after receiving a suspended sentence. The first 2 victims, they considered, well, they were dying anyway, so they didn't charge him with those, which is unbelievable. I mean, you can't just perform surgeries on people when just because they're maybe not going to make it. It's such horrible criminal neglect. It's just disgusting. So Paolo, with his arrogance, and the prosecution appealed the verdict, and in June 2023, the Court of Appeals charged Paolo with aggravated assault on all 3 of the patients. His sentence is 2.5 years in prison. 2.5 years in prison. He killed 7 people that we know of. I mean, who knows? There could be more. The 8th person had to have his trach removed. I mean, none of these surgeries were successful. Now, if you were to ask Paolo, he said transplants in the beginning of conception are going to fail, and this is part of the process. But you start the process with animals, not with human beings. This is just insane. So Paolo's legacy was more important than any of his patients' lives. And I wonder, when he gets out, do you think he will pursue this destiny of his to create these windpipes again? I mean, he can go to different countries. I don't know, guys. I don't see this man just not being a surgeon anymore, just going away and never performing these surgeries again. I'm sure there's countries that will look past his prison sentence, and his arrogance will just make him continue to do these surgeries. Let me know what you think, guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening. Bye.